Welcome everyone, I'm Terri Austin and you're watching Law and Crime. So we are going to run down all of the top cases of 2019 so you have a look at what the most memorable cases were, starting with Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum. Now the reason this case is so memorable is because they were the foster parents to little Layla, and Layla was found dead at the hands of Jennifer Rosenbaum. So there are conflicting information here. We are saying that there is information where Layla was hurt from falling down in the gym, and there's information where she was choking and Jennifer was trying to save her. So first, we're going to take a look at the verdict in this case. So we are very lucky today because we have Joseph Scott Morgan with us, and he is the best forensic death investigator that you could have on your show. And we're going to ask him now about this case and about the verdicts. Let me ask you, so Joseph, you saw that both of the defendants were found guilty and Jennifer was found guilty of the higher crime. What do you think that was all about?
Well, I think from a custodial standpoint, she bore the brunt of the responsibility of care with this child. And also, I think that there was a level of deception here that played into the verdict in this particular case. You know, when we were covering this, it struck me that the defense could be so simplistic relative to the myriad of complicated injuries that this little angel sustained. The blunt force trauma that she sustained was just absolutely overwhelming. The pain that this child endured over and over and over again at the hands of both of these people, but her specifically, I think really shocked the conscience of the court, shocked the conscience of the jury, and they wanted somebody to pay. And I think that at the end of the day, they got it right.
I think you're absolutely right about that. And one of the things that we saw in this trial, because we covered this when it was happening, is the injuries that Layla had. The defense was trying to claim that this was from gymnastics. And also, I guess their main defense was the fact that she was choking on a chicken bone. But clearly the jury did not believe that. So what do you think the defense could have done to show more of these injuries that were not inflicted intentionally, but injuries that could have been accidental?
Well, I think that the level of gravity of these injuries, it just could not be ignored. And the fact that this child went untreated as well, that's another factor here. You know, I think that goes into I know that this is more of a civil area, but, you know, when you begin to think about pain and suffering that this child endured, and I think that can be factored in the criminal side as well. Some people might argue that that's not the case, but I believe that it can, because it shows a pattern that has developed, and that the child would sustain these types of injuries vis-a-vis, you know, some gymnastics activity is absolutely absurd. The child had severe injuries throughout her body. And so you had the physical evidence, and this is the way I can sum this up. You had the physical evidence, literally her body was screaming at the jury, and what was left behind was screaming at the jury all through this case, and you cannot get past that.
Joseph, that's a very good point. Let's take a look now at when the police officer actually talked to Jennifer and frankly was trying to find out exactly the points that you are making here. Let's take a look. So you just heard Dr. Evans talk about the fact that Layla had all of these horrible injuries, and the one that really impressed me was the nightstick injury. And Joseph, let me ask you about that. When you see something like that, what does it mean to you? And would you have ordered additional x-rays as Dr. Evans did here?
Well, first, let me talk about Dr. Evans a little bit and why I value testimony like his, because unlike an investigator like myself or my colleagues that are in forensics, this guy is in the business of saving lives. He's there, he's in real time, and he kind of he was a fantastic witness in the sense that he could convey what he was seeing in the last moments, if you will, of this child's life. He literally called the code. Remember, he said once the code was called, he knew the child was flatlined, child is deceased at that point. But he saw enough evidence there to warrant further examination. And he's an ER physician, so he said that he treats over 100,000 people a year. That's in the area where he's in. That's not unreasonable. He'll have people coming through the door all the time. This is, I think, down in the southern part of the Atlanta metro area, so it's a very busy place. He will have seen lots of injuries. He talked about the diffuse injuries that this little baby had all over her body, and so our folks at home understand this. What he's talking about is she's literally got contusions or bruises all over her body, and one of the things that he has noted is that they are in various stages of healing. You know, a lot of us at home, we can think about these injuries from the perspective of we've had a bruise before. We know that it goes from red to kind of purple. Sometimes it'll go to a black color, and then as it recedes, it'll go from a yellow to a green. And in forensics, that's how we age childhood injuries and any kind of injuries of abuse. But when he gets to that point where he talks about this nightstick injury, that's a blocking injury. Did you see on the stand how he took his forearm? He said it was in the ulna. We have the ulna and the radius that make up the structure of the forearm. He literally threw this up. This is a blocking injury. This is if someone is attacking you most of the time with, say, it comes from nightstick, like a cop would carry a nightstick, and they're kind of hammering down on you. So he said that he saw where the injury had not resolved. It was untreated, and it was there was an area that indicated to him that nature had begun to take its course and it was healing on its own. This takes some time. That's what's so horrific about this, because of the brutality, the level of brutality, and the kind of languishing that we can just kind of conjure up in our minds that this poor baby went through over a period of time. This was not an event that happened acutely. This is chronic child neglect and abuse.
And Joseph, that's exactly why we're so glad you're here today to tell us all about this case. Let's take a break, but stay with us because you're going to watch more of what's happening on the Rosenbaum case.